Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. See Mary here in the chat. If you are here joining me this afternoon, we've got some of our leadership team in the chat. So they will be chatting with you. If you're here, please leave a note in the chat. Let us know where you are watching from. I'm just going to sort of stall for a minute before I jump in, let people see that we are live and join on. I see Joy also now in the chat from our leadership team. So hope you all are having a great week. I know I bounced the time around on this today. Usually I like to get on at 2 p.m. on Thursdays, Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern. But I had an unpredicted, is that what it was? Impromptu call today at 5 o'clock my time. So I then pushed out till 6, and then it was over at like 5:15. And so I was like, I just want to get my evening on. So let's do this at 5:30. So thanks for your patience. We are going to talk about a number of things this afternoon, evening. So you guys had, if you're watching from Washington, you had that storm that was predicted to come yesterday. And from everything I've heard and seen on social media, it was a big bummer. It looked like people were kind of excited about that. But, I think it's probably for the best, because if you lost power or, had some kind of damage or something like this, I don't know how good the emergency response would be there in Washington. So probably best that was avoided. So let's jump in first to kind of an update on what's going on in Washington State's legislature in Olympia. Get into the home stretch of this year's session. It's a regular length or a long session, so it will go till the end. I want to say it's April 27th. It seems like they've been in session forever now. I think it's been I think this is week 11, but it's been they do a lot of damage in just a few months. So I think there's over 2,000 bills that have been dropped so far this year. That's a lot. That's a lot of new policies or changed policies. That's an awful lot. And most of them are not good. They're not beneficial for the citizens. So what the legislature is doing now is they're kind of trying to wrap up all of their committee work, get bills out of committee, so that if they have to go back over to their chamber of origin for it's not reconciliation. Maybe it is reconciliation, but if the opposite chamber has made changes to the bill, then it has to go back over to the chamber of origin to be reconciled, and they vote on it again. And so they need to allow time for that. This weekend, though, Saturday and then on Monday, the chambers will be voting on their budget bills. And as you've probably heard, the Democrats are proposing some outrageous tax increases for the good people of Washington State, which is going to make it more difficult for people to afford to live in Washington. And I predict that there will be a lot of people looking to move out of Washington to places that are more affordable and more livable, more free than Washington. So Joy is saying I'm correct. Sindai is April 27th. So that is the last day of session. And they always hold the worst of the worst. The most controversial bills are always held till the last week of session. And as you saw, at mid-session with cutoff, they hold they hold those bad bills until the middle of the night. Yesterday I watched the first floor debate here in Florida, and that was really interesting to compare and contrast with how the floor debates go in Washington State. And I am sort of embarrassed because I've become this nerd that I actually enjoy watching these debates, which is, I didn't used to be this way. I used to be cool. Anyway, they actually there was a gun bill in the Florida House that was debated yesterday, and the speaker sets a time limit. So they only had 40 minutes to debate the bill, whereas in Washington, they'll debate for hours. And so I think that's a much better way to do it. I guess pick the best of your amendments or whatever. Anyway, that particular bill was to lower the age from 21 to 18 to be able to purchase a firearm. And so it did pass out of the House, and it's making its way now to the Senate. And I'm here. So we have a big rhino problem going on right now in the Florida legislature, with DeSantis being towards the end of his term, and they know he can't run again. And so there's kind of this power struggle going on with the rhinos in the legislature and DeSantis, and they're not really doing the conservative policies that he is asking for and what the people of Florida want. So it's an interesting dynamic. And from what I'm hearing from people who have been watching Florida legislature for a while, there's concern that the firearm bill will not pass through the Senate. I'm hearing that the Senate Majority Leader doesn't really have an appetite for that bill. Now, when Rick Scott who's a senator now, when he was governor of Florida, that's when they raised the age to purchase a firearm from 18 to 21. And Pam Bondi was also the attorney general in Florida when the red flag laws were instituted. So the rhino problem that y'all have in Washington is a problem that exists in every single state in America. And it's so discouraging because it's like politics is a game to these people. It's a career, it's theater. And it's not good for us, for the people. And so that's why it's important for us as citizens to be engaged in what is going on and really holding our elected officials accountable, because most of the time they're only accountable to the people that are bankrolling their campaigns. And so we as citizens, obviously we can't contribute as much as some of these PACs do, but we do have a loud voice and we have our votes. And so it's really important that we speak up. And I would especially say, if you are someone who has left or is going to leave a blue state and go live in a red state, it's imperative that you become engaged in your government, whether at a state level or local in your city or your county council, to make sure that, because the policies in the blue states, these leftist policies, and I would say uniparty policies, really, they are not content to staying in blue states, and they are really working hard to get into every state. So keeping states free, keeping our country free, is something that's going to take an effort by every single one of us, and we're going to have to commit to being engaged on some level in the process. So hey, Leslie joined the chat. Nice to see you gals, all you gals. And I don't know how to say your name. Washington will lose seats like California, New York, and Oregon. And Washington taxpayers are walking bank accounts for the legislators. That's true. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens as taxpayers start leaving. And, there was a news article, I don't have it handy, but it was about the Seattle businesses that have left Washington. And so the payroll taxes are much less than what they needed to be, that they had budgeted for, because so many businesses like Amazon and stuff have left. And this is going to continue to happen. I mean, Washington is not a business friendly state. So they're going to lose payroll taxes. They're going to lose taxpayers. They have all these programs in place for homeless people and immigrants and people that just don't want to have jobs. They have a lot of social services in place, and they attract homeless people and immigrants and things like that. And they're not going to have a way to fund those programs if they lose all the people that actually pay taxes. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I do believe that Washington is in for a total collapse. I don't know how soon that will happen, but I think it's going to have to collapse in order to be rebuilt. And I think that's going to be a long process. And certainly there are going to need to be people there who are willing to be part of that rebuild process. So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting. And with these taxes and the budget, that's going to be interesting as well. So let's get into some of the worst of the worst bills, the bills that we've been tracking closely. Everybody probably knows about House Bill 1163, which is the permit to purchase bill. That bill had a hearing on Tuesday morning in the Senate Law and Justice Committee, and it had executive session today. And it was voted out of committee today. So the next stop for this bill, I believe, will be the Ways and Means Committee. So we'll need to have a public hearing in the Ways and Means Committee, which would be another opportunity for citizens to testify, either in writing or in person or virtually on Zoom, and to register your opposition. I believe that it will have to go to a fiscal committee before it goes to a full vote of the Senate. So if you're not already subscribed to our Substack, you will want to, that's the best way to get breaking alerts and calls to action. So go sign up, conservativeladiesofamerica.substack.com, and we will have that pushed out as soon as it's scheduled for a public hearing. Senate Bill 5181, which repeals the Parents' Bill of Rights, Initiative 2081, was had a public hearing Tuesday, I think, and now it's scheduled for executive session. It's scheduled on Monday, March 31st, and Tuesday. Are my dates correct? I might be off a day. But it's scheduled for exec session on the 31st and on the 1st. So I think that's because if they don't get to it on the 31st, then they can do it on the 1st. House Bill 1296, which is sort of the House version of that, except House Bill 1296 goes a lot further, and it creates a Students' Bill of Rights. And that bill passed out of the Senate. Is that right? Yes, it passed out of the Senate. I'm getting many of my meetings confused because I just watched a House Education Committee exec session on Senate Bill 5123, which expands on the groups of students that can't be protected class of students. So 1296 passed out of the Senate Education Committee today. And I caught the very tail end of their debate on that. And Senator McCune was questioning the emergency clause on the bill and saying that there wasn't an emergency. So putting an emergency clause on a bill that isn't actually an emergency is an unconstitutional thing to do. And then he said he was going to save the rest of his comments for the Senate floor debate. So Senator McCune is good about not mincing words. So I will look forward to his floor speech on House Bill 1296. House Bill 1531. This is the one that gives the state government broad authority in to declare health emergencies and health precautions. Think like vaccine mandates, mask mandates, social distancing, that kind of thing. And citizens have really been speaking out against this bill. This passed out of the Senate Health Committee, and Republican Senator Paul Harris voted yes. I think it's because there was some measles outbreak down in the Vancouver area not long ago, and that was his reason for voting yes, I believe. Not a good reason in my book. House Bill 1531 the next step for that is the Senate floor for a vote. House Bill 1971, this just came on our radar this week. I put out a video about it. It would give people a 12-month supply of hormones, people of any age. So think about kids. Think about kids getting puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones from Planned Parenthood, a 1-year supply. And it goes for any kind of hormone. So if you are a female getting them for menopause or whatever, it would apply to that as well. But really the intent of this bill is for the transgender people to be able to get a full supply. And in the testimonies, I watched a ton of testimony on this. They talk the people from the left the only people that testified were pro on this bill. And they were saying how it's really critical that they have this access because of the Trump administration that's trying to take away their access to these hormones. And I haven't heard that for adults. I know that we're trying to stop doing these things to kids, but I haven't heard that for adults, and the adults were the ones testifying. So that passed out of the Senate Healthcare Committee. 2 Republicans voted yes on that. That was Paul Harris again, and Ron Mazzal. who is, I think he's out of LD12, which is like Whidbey Island, Oak Harbor area. So that's really unfortunate. It did, when it passed out of the House, it was totally on party lines. All the Republicans voted no. I think it's really demoralizing for people in Washington. I don't even live in Washington anymore. It's demoralizing for me to see that the Republicans who have nothing more to lose can't even hold the line. And so it must, to me, it feels like, and I'm not a resident, but I have loved ones who are residents there, and we still have special interests in Washington. Like, you don't even have people holding the line. Why is that so hard to do? And on a bill like this, unless there was an amendment to make sure that it was 18 and over, maybe then you could say yes. But the fact that this is for all ages, that's what the bill says, all ages. So we're talking children of no minimum age. It's so frustrating. So that passed out of committee. Thank you, Republicans. And that will go to the Senate floor for a vote. House Bill 1217, which is the rent control bill. I don't have a lot of details on this bill because we didn't really cover it until it was up for a floor vote in the House. But this, I think it passed out of committee on party lines. But this is on the floor calendar in the Senate now. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It goes to Ways and Means. So that will have a public hearing soon. So again, if you're not already signed up for our Substack, do that, because that's how you'll know when you can sign in to testify or just register your position. Senate Bill 5623 is the bill that expands Washington's SHIELD law. So the SHIELD law basically makes Washington state a sanctuary state for transgender care and abortion. So if kids come from other states, say Idaho, a teenage girl is brought from Idaho, let's just say an uncle who raped her, and she gets pregnant and he brings her over to Washington for an abortion, and something goes wrong and she gets harmed. Her parents, nobody is liable for it. And Washington state will protect the provider and whoever brought her. And so it's a terrible bill. Anyway, 5623 expands on that. And so that was passed. I have written on my thing passed. I don't think it's gone to a full vote of the House yet. So I think it's probably headed in that direction. Now, one that you've probably been hearing a lot about, especially if you're watching on X, is Senate Bill 5068. This is the bill that allows non-citizens to be law enforcement, firefighters, prosecutors. And this passed out of the Senate earlier this month unanimously. All of the Republicans voted for it. Now, I do want to say I did hear from Senator Jim McCune. He called me on Monday and he wanted to talk about this bill because he was getting a lot of calls from constituents and he was feeling very badly about it. And he said out of the hundreds of bills, sometimes they get briefed by the caucus or, someone who was on the committee that the bill went through. And so he'd gotten briefed in caucus by someone else, and the whole caucus was planning to vote for it. So that was really kind of the only information that he had. And so he voted for it, and he didn't realize until after the fact what a bad bill it was. And he really regretted his vote. And what I appreciate about that is, and I'm sure it happens a lot that legislators regret their vote, and they're only human. So that's fine. I appreciate, though, that he acknowledged that he made a bad vote and he regretted it. Most of the time when legislators are called out on their votes, I don't know if they didn't know about it or they did know, but let's say they didn't. They never, I think I've maybe heard one other legislator, and I think it was Brad Clipper, say that they made a bad vote because they were not informed and they regretted that vote. Most of the time they will deflect, and it's, well, you just don't understand. You don't know how it works. You don't know how to read the bill. And there are a number of reasons why they will deflect like that. But I did appreciate that that he owned it and he regretted it. And he did want me to make sure, if you talk about the bill again, make sure you tell people that. So he was regretful about that. And I told him, I said, just if you're on the floor and there's bills that you don't know about, if you shoot me a text, I will, put it out to our team and we'll, race to find you information and see what we can come up with. Because I know it's hard that they've got all these bills, and I appreciate that he values the work that we do and our information and our investigating. So anyway, that's always good. I think, though, that if a legislator does make a bad vote like that, or they make a controversial vote, it would be good for them to get out ahead of it and put out a statement of, why they voted that way. If it was a mistake, just own it and say it was a mistake. I wish I hadn't voted that way. Or if they did make a controversial vote, just say why you did it. I think that's a good idea to do. And we're seeing at least on X, I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook, but on X, you're seeing a lot of social media content, reels and video content coming out from the House and Senate. So clearly they could get on social media and put out a statement as well. So that is 5068. It's on the floor calendar. It passed out of the House, out of the House committee. So now it's on the floor calendar. Terrible bill. Hopefully it did pass out of committee along party lines. So that signals to me that the Republicans got the message that this is a bad bill. That is all that I have on my Washington bills. We have here in Florida, and this is a national issue. So if you're in Washington or wherever you might be watching from, you'll want to listen to this because this is going to impact all of us. We have a special election for two congressional House seats, one in District 1 and one in District 6. Mike Waltz, who is now, I forget his position, but he's in the Trump cabinet. And then in District 1, Matt Gaetz resigned his position at the end of last year, right after he was reelected. So we have special election to replace those two seats. In District 6, Senator Randy Fine is running for that seat. He's a Republican and he's a rhino, and he was, he pushes a lot of policies that are not conservative. He's got a lot of, big donor backing, and he's not doing very well. He's not well liked in Florida, and he's not doing well in his race. His district was one that Trump won by 30 points. So he should be winning that race handily. So in Florida, we have, we vote by party. Well, at least on the primary, but it should be pretty easy for him to, an R+30 district should be really easy to win. That should be a piece of cake. And it's looking like it could be questionable. Now, we had our lunchtime legislation meeting at noon today, Pacific time. And Jeannie, who's on our leadership team, we were kind of talking about this. And she said, so for me, I'm thinking, well, what's a better strategy here? Is it better if the seat flips blue and you elect a Democrat, and then you come back in 2026 and elect a conservative? Is that, or do you elect the rhino? Who's harder to get rid of, the rhino or the Democrat? I know in Washington, it would be easier in a solid red district. You'd think it would be easier to get rid of the Democrat, which was in District 3, where Joe Kent ran. When Marie won in 2022, I was thinking, well, that would be easier for a Republican to defeat her than to defeat a rhino. But as you guys, if you're in Washington, as you saw, that was a very tight race. And I actually teased Joe before he got his Trump appointment and said he should come move the family here to Florida and run for one of these congressional seats. Wouldn't that have been awesome? Because then everybody would have been happy. All Americans would have had Joe Kent in Congress. At least I would have been happy. So Jeannie said, because our margin in the House is what'd she say, 213 to 218 or something like that. So it's a pretty slim margin. So we do need to keep as many seats as possible. So from that angle, and it's easier to corral a rhino to go along with the Trump agenda, which at this point seems very rhino-ish in many ways. So that's what's happening here in Florida. So I think District 1 is a no-brainer. That will easily stay red. But this seat in District 6 is going to be interesting to watch. And I would imagine if Fine gets it, which I guess hopefully he does, because we want to keep it red. Hopefully there's a conservative Republican that will primary him in 2026. That would be nice. What else is going on? I think, I was going to talk about education, but we're already up on 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock for you guys. I guess I could for a few more minutes talk about, I want to talk about education. So there's a lot going on nationwide with education. And I want to give a shout out to Kennewick School District in Kennewick, Washington. That school board has been a leader in common sense. I'm not even going to call it conservative. I'm just going to say common sense policies and doing what is best for the students in their school district. And they have again stepped up and challenged the state government. They filed an OCR, an Office of Civil Rights complaint today, after their school board voted last night to file the complaint. And so they did that today against OSPI, Chris Reichdahl, for, forcing all of these policies on them, which is excellent. I'm glad that they did that. We've got on, I'm going to be putting out a Substack about it as well, but it's on all our socials, on Facebook and X. I've shared the complaint that they filed and a statement from Gabe Galbraith, who is the president of the school board. And Gabe and Micah Valentine, who's also a school board director, the two of them are going to do a live stream with me probably this weekend. So we will do that, and they're going to talk about their process and why they did that, how they did that, and how other school districts can do that, and what parents can do. And taxpayers, because you can bring this up to your school board. This isn't something that the school board directors have to decide on their own. Whatever school district you're in, you could go to a school board meeting and ask them to do the same thing and to file a complaint against the OSPI for their, allowing boys into girls' restrooms and locker rooms and playing on girls' sports teams. So this is something that could be replicated. And what we need to do, especially where you don't have school boards like Kennewick, we need parents and taxpayers to be bringing this idea to the school boards. And granted, in many of these areas, the school board is going to laugh you out of the room. I mean, we were in North Shore School District when we lived in Washington, and super, super hard left. But I think it's important to do it anyway. And it's important to go on record with these things and to get other parents on board with you. And this seems like, although in some of the very deep blue areas of Washington, it seems like it's hard to get everybody on board to see why allowing boys into girls' spaces is not a good thing. People are drunk on the Kool-Aid, and it's crazy to me. But another thing that we're seeing a lot of information coming out from the Department of Education, federal level, how we're going to return this to the states, and we're going to close the Department of Education. The word is slipping my mind. And return it to the states. And, it's the state's job to educate children. And I think that we really need to, this is a really good opportunity for us as citizens and parents to realize that it's our duty as parents to educate our kids. And I'll speak for myself, and I'm a Gen X, and I always, wanted to be, have a, career. I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer. That was my dream when I was in high school, and I would have a nanny to take care of my kids. That's kind of what that was the dream that we were sold. That was kind of being successful meant you had a career and you had someone taking care of your kids. And we've done that. I think a lot of people in my generation, myself included, we have allowed others to raise our children. Maybe not totally, maybe you were there before and after school, but we have had this idea in our mind that they'll go to school and someone's going to teach them, and then they'll come home and I'll feed them a snack. And but we've abdicated so much of our parental duty to the government in a number of different ways. And so it's really just time to shift our culture to making parenting great again, and really being engaged parents in what our kids are doing. I have a lot of friends that are teachers. My mom is a retired high school teacher, educator, I will say. So my mom, obviously, she's in her 80s, so she got into education a long time ago. But for her, it was, she loved teaching. She loved educating. She loved students. And my mom still has, to this day, students that she keeps in touch with, students that are, my age and some even older than me. And it was her way of mentoring people. And she loves learning. She loves education. Like, we would go on vacations and it was always like we were on a field trip and we had to go to museums and, all these things. And she was always teaching us, which as a kid, we hated that because we just wanted to be at the pool or the beach or whatever. And she's making us to do like school education stuff. But where was I going with this? Oh, my teacher friends. I grew up around teachers. So I've been in, my uncle was a superintendent for 6 different school districts in Washington State. A bunch of my cousins are teachers. I have good friends that are teachers. And I always tried to build a relationship with my kids' teachers because I was a single mom. And so I needed to have as much communication with them as possible. I wanted to know what was going on. But a common thing I hear from teachers is that parents are not engaged. Parents don't respond to emails, don't return phone calls. Parents don't want to help solve problems. If the kid has a behavior problem in class, parents are not really very responsive to the teachers or the administrators on this. And not all the policies that are going on, especially in Washington public schools, they're bad policies, but that doesn't mean all of the staff that work in schools are on board with those policies. Many of them don't like those policies. And honestly, most of my teacher friends are like, I can't wait to be able to retire and get out because of those policies. They love teaching, but it's no longer about teaching. They're being forced to indoctrinate kids. So I say all of this because it is a problem. It's a problem with that parents are not engaged in student learning, student education. And we have this culture that says that it's the job of the state, whatever the state is, whether it's the federal government or the state government or your county or whatever, to educate kids. But it's not. It's our job as parents and grandparents and neighbors. And, somebody posted in response to one of my tweets today, like, make the little house. Is that what it was? The little house, where you had the little schoolhouse where, back in the old days where all the kids went to the one little schoolhouse and there was one teacher and like 12 kids. And it was a community thing. We need to get back to that. Maybe not that exactly, but we need to get back to making education more intimate with our kids and not letting the state, the government have control over that. So that's a big shift. That's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's probably decades, generations away. But I think that we're at a point in time where we have the opportunity to start having those conversations and especially with this, a lot of people talking about parental rights, which I prefer to call them children's rights, with having these conversations about parents, duties and responsibilities. If we have rights to our kids, we also have responsibilities to our kids. So that's something that that we should think about as well. Leslie's saying in the chat, except in my children's experience, I begged the teachers to keep me in the loop and the teachers didn't. In fact, when I would go to the teachers before or after school, they refused to talk to me. And that happens too. Like, I'm not saying that all teachers are great teachers, because they're not. I just do want to be on record that there are some really good teachers who aren't on board with all of this stuff. But there are, like Leslie said, there are teachers who want to keep secrets and don't want parents to know. And I've encountered both kinds. So I think that right there, that, and you don't know, right? You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what kind of teacher, especially once they're in middle school and high school and they have, 6 different teachers a day, or if they're in special ed, they may have even more influencers than that, because they have paraeducators and specialists that they are working with throughout the day. So you don't know all of these people that come into contact with your child in a given day. And it's impossible to know, who are these people? What's their background? Where did they come from? What's their belief system? How, is it like mine? Is it different than mine? And if you're in a place like Western Washington, and, Leslie's in Eastern Washington, I don't know if that's where you had this experience, Leslie, but you don't, it doesn't matter where you are. Your child is going to encounter staff in the school system that have very different values from the family that they come from. And so that's why it's critical that we as parents are more involved, and even that means someone said, well, it's really hard because they don't have textbooks. Well, I get that. It is harder because they have these Chromebooks, which are awful, in my opinion. I wish they had regular textbooks, but you can go through, I forget what the system that our schools used in North Shore, but there was an app, and I had it on my phone and my kids had it, and it showed all of their assignments, and you could put in notes for the teacher, and the teacher could put in notes for the parent and the student. So you can go through that every day. Like, that's what we would do with the kids when, after school, like, let's look at, did you turn in all your assignments, and what assignments have you got going, and kind of trying to help them with that. And I know it's difficult, especially if you have teenagers. It makes it really difficult, especially if you're not already in the habit. A new habit is really difficult to make with teenagers, but you have to start somewhere. So I would encourage you to start having those conversations, start getting more engaged, and maybe ease into it if you have a teenager that's a little bit resistant to that. So Rebecca says, we don't have generations. We are blessed if we have months. I do agree. But I don't think that it's going to turn in just months. I wish it would. That would be awesome. But anyway, so that is our Womansplaining, back at the usual time, which is 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, next Thursday. I don't know what that date is. It's like April 3rd or 4th, maybe 3rd. Yep. So I will be back next Thursday, and we should have a lot of these bills that I've mentioned about Washington should have cleared the chamber. There will be a lot of votes going on. And like I said, they're doing budgets Saturday and Monday. And you can find the budget bills on the ledge.wa.gov site. I'll also be putting them out in a Substack probably tomorrow. So if you're not already subscribed to the Substack, put that up here one more time so you can go get that. And I'll have links in the Substack, or you can go to ledge.wa.gov. It's 5167 is the Senate bill version. And there'll be, I don't know what the House bill number is off the top of my head, but it'll be on the same page, and you can click on the House bill number. But those are, like, if you want to look up waste and fraud and stupid spending, that is a good place to do it. And you can keyword search, do your F4 and you can search whatever keywords you want, like immigrant or equity, any of those things that you might find garbage spending. So go check that out, ledge.wa.gov. Be sure to sign up for our Substack. And thanks for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing y'all again next week.